Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's 8 p.m. Cairo local time, and this is a new edition of Panorama News. In the upcoming 35 minutes, we'll be bringing you the latest of the political, economic, and sports news from all around the world. I'm Henny Saif, I'll be your host for tonight, and we'll start off with the political news, where President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said Egypt and Djibouti are linked in extended strategic relations that are coupled with a mutual political will for their enrichment and enhancement. The President was addressing a joint press conference on Monday with Djibouti's President Ismail Omar Guelleh, who is currently on an official visit to Egypt. President al-Sisi added bilateral cooperation with Djibouti have witnessed a remarkable push in recent years, citing his earlier visit to Djibouti last year. He also said the talks dealt with Ethiopia's Renaissance Dam and stressed Egypt's willingness to reach a binding deal over the filling up and operation phases of the dam. The President asserted the importance of establishing peace and stability in the Horn of Africa region and promoting cooperation to ensure security in the Red Sea. For his part, Djibouti's President Guelleh said the talks with President al-Sisi tackled means of boosting relations and exchanged points of view over issues of mutual interest. He emphasized the need to activate cooperation in establishing regional security and stability, congratulating President al-Sisi for hosting upcoming UN Climate Change Conference COP27 in November. On the sidelines of the summit, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Djibouti's President Ismail Omar Guelleh witnessed the signing of Memoranda of Understanding and Cooperation Agreements. The agreements included a memo for setting up a mechanism for political consultations between the foreign ministries of Egypt and Djibouti. Another agreement dealt with establishing a logistics zone in Djibouti. A third was in the field of energy and renewable resources. Earlier, an official reception was held at Al Ittihadiyya Presidential Palace to honor the Djibouti president. Late Sunday, President al-Sisi received Guelleh and his accompanying delegation at Cairo International Airport. In its daily coronavirus report, the Ministry of Health reported 2,301 new cases. The ministry also reported that 59 deaths related to COVID-19 complications were recorded in the past 24 hours nationwide. The statement added that the total number of those who recovered reached 372,332 cases. Australia will reopen its borders to tourists from February 21st, ending some of the world's strictest and longest-running pandemic travel restrictions. Australia's borders slammed shut in March 2020 in the hope of protecting the island continent against a surging global pandemic. Meanwhile, a Chinese city of 3.5 million near the border with Vietnam was on lockdown Monday after more than 70 coronavirus cases were discovered there over the past 3 days. China, the only major world economy still sticking to a staunch zero-COVID policy, is on high alert for any outbreaks as it hosts the Beijing Winter Olympics. In Hong Kong, zero-COVID policy is on the ropes after a record number of new infections was announced over the weekend, sending officials scrambling to ramp up testing capacity and warning that a tightening of virus control measures could be needed. Hundreds of mourners gathered to pay their final respects on Monday to the Moroccan boy who died on Saturday after a days-long effort to rescue him from a well that transfixed the country and many abroad. 5-year-old Rayyan Awram fell into the well in Ighran village on Tuesday. Hundreds of mourners gathered to pay their final respects on Monday to the Moroccan boy who died on Saturday after a days-long effort to rescue him from a well that transfixed the country and many abroad. 5-year-old Rayyan Awram fell into the well in Ighran village on Tuesday. His body was finally pulled out late on Saturday after rescuers excavated much of an adjacent hillside and then tunneled towards the bottom of the well. Hundreds of mourners climbed the hilly, unpaved road leading to the cemetery in Ighran in northern Morocco, where they waited for hours for the funeral to observe the Muslim burial rituals. There were so many mourners that they could not all fit into the village cemetery and prayer site. 2 large tents were erected in front of the grieving family's house where mourners could stop to offer condolences. On Saturday, condolences to the parents also came from King Mohammed VI, Pope Francis, French President Emmanuel Macron, Dubai ruler Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, and other notables. Egyptian and Senegalese football players held a minute of silence on Sunday before the kickoff of the final of the African Cup of Nations football tournament. Rescuers had worked relentlessly at constant risk of triggering a landslide in their ultimately fruitless effort to pull out the child alive. Iraqi lawmakers failed to elect a new head of state on Monday as key factions foiled the attempt by boycotting the parliament session. A 2/3 quorum of the legislature's 329 members is required for an electoral session. Monday's vote could not be held as lawmakers, many of them allied with powerful Iraqi cleric Muqtada Sadr, stayed away. Only 58 lawmakers showed up. The failure to elect a president reflects the deep divisions among Iraq's political factions that have only grown since the October 10th parliament elections, whose results have been rejected by political groups supported by neighboring Iran. Iraqi politicians have so far failed to agree on a compromise candidate for the country's top post, and the delay Monday raised concerns of a presidential vacuum that would also prevent the appointment of a prime minister. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson wants to offer Russia reassurance about NATO's role because it is a defensive alliance and any European democracies should be able to join. Russia, which seized Crimea from Ukraine in 2014, is demanding security guarantees, including a promise NATO will never admit Ukraine. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson wants to offer Russia reassurance about NATO's role because it is a defensive alliance and any European democracies should be able to join. Russia, which seized Crimea from Ukraine in 2014, is demanding security guarantees, including a promise NATO will never admit Ukraine. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron is set to hold talks in Moscow Monday in a bid to help de-escalate the tense situation around Ukraine. The concentration of an estimated 100,000 Russian troops near Ukraine has fueled Western worries that it heralds a possible offensive, with White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan warning Sunday that Russia could invade Ukraine any day, triggering a conflict that would come at an enormous human cost. Russia has denied any plans to attack its neighbor, but is urging the US and its allies to bar Ukraine and other ex-Soviet nations from joining NATO, halt weapons deployments there, and roll back NATO forces from Eastern Europe. Washington and NATO have rejected the demands. The French presidency said Macron sought to ensure good coordination with Biden in the call. Continuing the high-level diplomacy, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz is set to meet with Biden on Monday for talks expected to focus on the Ukrainian standoff. Britain on Monday firmly rejected a statement from China that affirmed Beijing's support for Argentina's claim to the Falkland Islands as relations between London and Asia's leading power remain strained. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss said in a tweet that the United Kingdom completely rejected any questions over sovereignty of the Falklands. Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Argentine counterpart Alberto Fernandez issued a joint statement on Sunday that said China reaffirms its support for Argentina's demand for the full exercise of sovereignty over the Malvinas Islands, using the Argentine name for the territory. The two leaders met as Fernandez was in Beijing for the Winter Olympics. London echoed to the sound of cannon shots on Monday to mark Queen Elizabeth II's 70 years on the throne, beginning a year of celebrations to honor Britain's longest-serving monarch. At midday, The King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery Unit fired a 41-gun salute from Green Park near the monarch's Buckingham Palace residence in central London. Another 62 shots then rang out an hour later from the Tower of London, the historic Royal Palace and home to the Crown Jewels 3 miles across the city. The ceremonies took place the day after Accession Day, the date in 1952 when Princess Elizabeth's father, King George VI, died and she became Queen. The 4 days of festivities in early June coincide with the anniversary of her 1953 coronation, including a military parade and music concert, street parties, a nationwide Big Jubilee lunch, and a platinum pudding competition. A South African court convicted and jailed twin brothers for terrorism on Monday over plans to attack the U.S. Embassy in Pretoria and join the Daesh terrorist group. Tony Lee Thulsi and Brandon Lee Thulsi, both 28, were arrested in South Africa in July 2016 and have been held in custody since. The South African brothers pleaded guilty earlier Monday as part of a plea bargain with the prosecution. Hours later, the Johannesburg High Court slapped Tony Lee with an 11-year jail term, while his brother, Brandon Lee, was sentenced to 8 years. Both pleaded guilty to planning to travel to Syria to join Daesh. Tony Lee also admitted to planning a terrorist attack in South Africa. Prosecutors said attacks also had been planned against the US, British, Russian or French diplomats in Pretoria, as well as Jewish institutions. Now it's time for the economic news, where Egypt's stock indices collectively slid in the trading session on Monday after being affected by profit-making selling operations. Analysts said that profit-making selling operations by foreign investors and investment funds led indices to slide early in the trading session and exceed selective purchasing operations by local and Arab investors. The benchmark EGX 30 index slid by 1.21%. to close at 11,548.61 points. The EGX 70 index for small and medium businesses went down by 0.84%, and the broader EGX 100 index also went down by 0.87%. After all indices slid by sales of investors, the market capitalization lost 3.6 billion Egyptian pounds to close at 748.4 billion amid transactions of about 2 billion pounds. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli held a meeting on Monday with engineer Yahya Zaki, the head of the Suez Canal Economic Zone, to review the implementation of new development projects and discuss recent investment offers in the Suez Canal Economic Zone. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli held a meeting on Monday to review the implementation of projects and to discuss means of attracting investments in the Suez Canal Economic Zone. The meeting was attended by Admiral Osama Rabia, head of the Suez Canals Authority, besides engineer Yahya Zaki, head of the Suez Canal Economic Zones Authority. During the meeting, Madbouli pointed out that the meeting aims at reviewing progress achieved in the ongoing infrastructure projects within the framework of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's mandate to develop the SCEZ. He added that considering different types of industrial and agricultural projects in the Suez Canal Economic Zone is a top priority on the government's agenda. Madbouli also said that attracting investments will be the best way to build all SCEZ's projects and achieve its objectives as a major national project, especially renewable energy projects. Prime Minister Madbouli discussed with engineer Yahya Zaki, head of the SCEZ's authority, a number of offers by other countries like China and Russia and international companies to invest in green hydrogen projects there. Zeki said that green hydrogen projects in the SCEZ will be the most vital and strategic basis for the Suez Canal Economic Zone to be an international logistical economic zone. This appeared clearly earlier during a meeting between President Sisi and Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing, when Xi stressed that the two sides will deepen mutually beneficial cooperation and continue to detail the Belt and Road Initiative with Egypt's Vision 2030, as well as advanced projects such as the development of the Suez Canal Economic Zone. Global shares were mostly higher in Europe and the USA on Monday after mixed trading in Asia, where the Shanghai benchmark jumped after reopening from the Lunar New Year holidays. In the US, Wall Street's main indices opened higher after a week of volatile trading spurred on by mixed quarterly results from big technology companies. So after 30 minutes of trade, the Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 0.34%. The S&P 500 also added 0.4% and the Nasdaq Composite gained 0.67%. In Europe, stock markets recovered at the open following pre-weekend losses as sentiment continues to be dominated by the outlook for interest rate rises as inflation soars. So in early trade, France's CAC 40 added 0.2%, Germany's DAX 30 gained 0.4%, and London's FTSE 100 also went up 0.4%. In Asia, markets fluctuated as a forecast busing U.S. jobs report reinforced